Chapter 9, page 83, Unexpected Arrivals. I'm not exactly sure what I'm going to say to Mr. Wilbur. I'm not one of those people who makes up speeches in his head, trying to get every word right before speaking up. But when I do get started, I usually say exactly what's on my mind. This is another reason why my mouth has got me into trouble in the past. But I don't get a chance. A horn honks from behind me, and I almost jump out of my skin. Even though a part of my brain has been registering the sounds of wheels rumbling along the dirt road, I've been so intent on talking to Mr. Wilbur that I've ignored it. There's a big smile on Mr. Wilbur's face as he looks over my shoulder. Wally and Dora, he says, I can't believe it. I never expected them to be here. An old blue Ford Bronco in mint condition is pulling up. There's a handicap parking sticker in the window. An elderly woman with a huge halo of white hair is the driver. She waves one hand at us as she climbs out, then slowly begins to make her way around to the other side, where an equally elderly man in the passenger seat is waiting for her to open the door. Come with me, Baron. I want you to meet just the people I need to talk to right now. We trot over to the car in time for me to get the door and for Mr. Wilbur to offer his left hand to the tall, thin old man who is now slowly climbing out, as well as hug the elderly woman with his right. Kirk, the elderly man is saying, I'm not an invalid. I can get out by myself. But I notice that he doesn't push Mr. Wilbur away as he says this, and he leans his weight onto my teacher as he brings one foot and then another down onto the ground with the careful deliberation of a heron wading into uncertain waters. I reach out my hand to help him balance, and he takes it. His hand is dry and cool, and his long fingers wrap around my wrist. It doesn't bother me at all. I'm used to helping old people like that. I do it all the time with Grandma Kateri on the days when her rheumatiz is acting up. Thank you, boy, the cloud-haired old woman says, patting me on the back. So nice to see a young man with manners. Then she pokes the finger at the chest of the old man. Not an invalid, you say? Ha! Let's you and me run a 100-yard dash and we'll see who wins now, Wally Philo. She turns to look down at me. Boy, she says, Wally's walker is in the back seat. Be a dear now and get it before this old fool falls down on his face and we have to use a derrick to get him back up again. As I go to the back door, Mr. Philo raises his hand in a gesture like that of a priest about to give a benediction. Fall down? Ha! With this new wiring in my chest, by this time next week, I'll be dunking a basketball again. In your dreams, darling, Mrs. Philo replies. If I could interrupt a moment, Mr. Wilbur says, let me introduce one of my students to you. Baron Braun, these two superannuated cut-ups are the founders of this camp, Wallace and Dora Philo. Mrs. Philo reaches over to grasp my hand. Braun? We knew a Braun family, didn't we, Wally? You a Mohawk boy? Yes, ma'am, I say. Say go, Mrs. Philo says, leaning over to take my other hand with those long fingers of his. Say go, his wife repeats. I'm stunned. They've just greeted me in a flawlessly pronounced Mohawk. Mrs. Philo is the one who explains. I was a fairly successful professional basketball player way long ago. Before the invention of the wheel, Mrs. Philo interjects. Along the way, I learned how popular basketball is among Indians. So I used to do a workshop every now and then in reservation schools. That's where I picked up a bit of Mohawk. I remember back about 20 years ago, there was a tall young man by the name of Braun who had some promise as a guard at the Agwesasne school. That would be my dad, I answered. I wait for them to ask the question I don't want to hear. Where is he now? But they don't ask. The Philos just look at each other and nod. The four of us stand there in silence. It isn't awkward, more like the kind of silence I'm used to experiencing around Indian elders, a silence that gives folks a chance to just settle in with each other. Mr. Wilbur is the one who finally breaks it. I have to say, I'm really glad to see you both. This is perfect timing. But what brought you here? For the first time, the Philos look surprised. Are you joking, dear? Mrs. Philos says. You're the one who left us the urgent message saying that we had to be here at Chuckamuck today. Mr. Wilbur puts his hand to his chin. Listen, he said, I didn't send you any message at all. I wonder what he didn't finish that sentence. The sound of an explosion cuts him off.